Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review movies and today's film is Damaged. It's a crime drama following a cop from Chicago teaming up with an inspector from Scotland to try and catch a serial killer that's moved over from America. Terry McDonough directed the film, which was written by Paul Agnello, Gianni Capaldi, and Koji Stephen Sakai. Samuel Jackson stars as the Chicago detective Dan Lawson, Vince Castle plays his former partner Bravo, and Gianni Capaldi plays the Scottish inspector Glenn Boyd. As usual, I'll go over what the film got right and then address the film's flaws, and finally end with a few personal thoughts and a rating. To begin, the story is your classic serial killer drama. We have two detectives running around Scotland, checking out crime scenes, interrogating witnesses and suspects, and obsessing over the minutiae of the case. The story sets out its facts well and follows along its path in a consistent manner. The cast does its best to play the journey out, and none of them are overly stiff or out of place. There's a few criminals playing creepy scumbags, a few witless witnesses, and then three leads each playing their own version of a detective. None of the personalities are all that large, but the actors deliver their lines cleanly and get a few decent emotional moments in here and there. The visual journey takes place in a normal Scottish city, moving around a few different locations like a police station, a few houses, a pub and a club, and a couple of outdoor crime scenes. They have conversations in each of the locations, and there's a bit of action every once in a while. The action mostly comes from the moments leading up to the murders and a couple of chases between the cops and the suspects. There's a bit of implied violence and a few aftermath photos of the corpses as well. For music, they had orchestral instrumentals that follow the journey and attempt to inject a bit of extra emotion into it. The soundtrack adds a bit of mystery, danger, and sadness to the story. It wasn't overly memorable, but it works well enough for the film. Alright, now that we've covered what they did right, I think it's important to point out how little this film has to offer beyond the standard journey. The story doesn't do anything all that well. Its characters are very basic and don't have much of a personality. They aren't interesting people, they don't engage in witty dialogue, and there aren't that many to begin with. You're just watching to see who the killer is, and that becomes painfully obvious about halfway into the film if you're paying attention. The case isn't all that interesting either, it's just your standard serial killer murdering random women without much cause. Even the big emotional moments feel incredibly stunted. They never focus on the characters or the emotions they're experiencing long enough to get any satisfaction out of them. Even Sam Jackson and Vincent Castle, who are both solid veteran actors, had their performances hollowed out. The visual journey and the soundtrack aren't much better. The visual journey takes place in boring locations, and they barely move around the spaces at all. They just sit still and talk. They don't throw in any interesting camera angles or do all that good of a job capturing the flow. It just feels like watching a basic cop show on television. The music, as I said earlier, is quite generic, and it doesn't really do a whole lot for the film. It adds a little bit of emotion, but doesn't try to add any flavor to the environments or the characters. It's just there to make tense moments a little more tense, or sad moments more tragic. Even in that regard, it isn't adding enough emotion to make up for the lack of it in the story. To add insult to injury, the film doesn't really end the story. It ends with a cliffhanger ending that is clearly meant to be finished in a sequel. It was annoying, didn't really make sense with the characters, and left a bad smell in the air. Overall, Damaged was a boring film that's watchable. The characters, the setting, the music, and even the performances are quite bland. There's nothing to get attached to or to be impressed by, and there are plenty of similar films that do this type of story much better. If you're bored out of your mind and want something to do, there are much better films to waste your time on. As for a rating, I'd give this film a 4 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye-bye.